Hello, my name is Reverend Coughlin. I grew up deaf. I was born deaf. My parents are also deaf. My grandparents are deaf too. I was born in New York, a town named Malone in Canada. My siblings are hearing. Two of them became interpreters. One of them is married to a deaf man, and they have a little girl. I went to the Rochester School for New York. They practiced finger spelling. I was there till I was 12. I went to a camp, Java Lake, which was near Buffalo, New York. It was a 2-week camp, and it was religiously based for children. I saw 2 nuns there who spoke to my parents and said that there was a St. Mary School for the Deaf near New Buffalo, which would be a good school, which had a religious environment, and it would help your son figure out what he wanted to do when he got older. So when I was 12, it was around 8 or 9 years. It was completely different than what I was used to. I began a lot about religion, learning a lot about religion. I learned the importance of religious and praying about God. And at about 16 or 17, I was really interested in religious. One of the nuns in my school gave me a book. It was called The Less Traveled Road. I started reading it, and it spoke about a Catholic man who was part of the group of monks for about 30 or 40 years. It spoke about his life. At that age, I was extremely interested in the thought of becoming a monk, and I asked for more books from the nun, and she did give me more books, and I read them, and I was really hooked. It was really interesting learning about priests and monks. So at about 19, I knew I was going to be graduating high school, and I thought, do I want to go to Gallaudet College, or do I think I should learn more about becoming a priest? So I contacted priests, and each of them were saying no, because being deaf was a problem with my communication, and it was really important to be able to pray with others. And I said, you're right. I started to agree with them. It would be hard. They must be right. So I felt inside like I had this want, this desire, but everyone else kept telling me no. I didn't know which way I should gear myself. So I sent letters to different places. I told them that I was deaf, and they would not accept me. I would send more letters, and they didn't accept me again and again. The world wasn't ready for a deaf priest. So I finally wrote another letter, and I did not put on it that I was deaf. I mentioned nothing about that. I said I was just a normal high school student, and we began conversing back and forth. And for about 2 or 3 months, they told me about the church and how they needed priests. I told them, they asked the name of my school, and then I realized there was a problem, because the name of the school was St. Mary School of the Deaf. Deaf. I noticed that word right away. Oh, if they noticed that word, I'd be done. There would be no way. So I just filled it out. I was honest. I said, I'm part of America. I'm just an ordinary child, but I'm deaf. I thought hopefully they'll miss that small word. I just fit it in somewhere in the middle. So they emailed back right away, about a week. And they said, we didn't know you were deaf. I didn't know you were handicapped. I don't know if I can accept a deaf person into our program. And on the last line, he wrote, have your school's principal send me a report. So they sent a report about my background, different skills I had in communicating, and my school and the priest began conversing back and forth about deciding whether or not to accept me. So they asked me to fly to meet them in person. This was going to be completely different. I was going to be with hearing people, and what was I going to do? It wasn't the same as it is now. The interpreters weren't as readily available. So I decided to take the plane. I arrived in Baltimore, and I met the man, and he asked if I was the one he was supposed to meet, and he asked if I knew oral communication, and I did. So we arrived at the seminary, and I went into the office, and I sat there, and the chief was sitting behind his desk, and he introduced me to the man standing there, Father Joseph. We shook hands. He asked me one question, which really threw me off. I wasn't sure if I knew what he said. Did I understand that correctly? Because the first question he asked was, how tall are you? I'm thinking, here I flew all the way over here, and that's what you're going to ask me? How tall am I? So I responded 5'10". And he looked at me in amazement, and he said, you know what I just said? I said, yes. And he said, but I thought you couldn't communicate. You're reading my lips? I didn't know you could talk. And I said, well, yeah, I'm reading your lips. Up until now, I've been doing that to communicate. And he asked me again, how old are you? I said, 21. He said, this is impossible. I can't believe this. Oh my gosh. And he starts laughing. For this whole time, I've been worried that I wouldn't be able to communicate with you because you were deaf and you wouldn't know how to communicate. I didn't know if I could accept you because of this. I really liked the idea, but you were deaf. I didn't know if it would work out. And I started feeling his nerves and understood we were both nervous. So we discussed this for a long time. We just continued chatting. We asked each other questions. He said he met other deaf people that did not communicate the same way I did. He said there must have been problems with communication, and I said each person's different. Some people do have problems with communication and lip reading. It's different. You need to make the best of it. So finally, I flew back to New York, and I got my letter of acceptance. And I was excited to start this challenge. I've grown up with a deaf family, deaf culture. Now I was going to be thrown into the world of speech. I was going to be facing many challenges. I knew I would really have to try. I thanked the school that I knew how to read lips, and that this was going to be a long process, but I had a strength in that. Was I happy? No. I cried because I was in a completely different group. This seminary, there was a bunch of boys. 36 of us were gathered together at a party at night, and we were sitting there chatting, and one of the boys asked my name, and I said, Tom, Miss Coughlin. And he said, I don't know what you're saying. And I was so thrown back that I just stopped talking. So he left, and I felt so awful. It was so easy signing and communicating at school, but this was a completely different situation I was faced with. People not being able to understand me. It was easy before, but now continued lip reading. I would need to practice. I started teaching other people some signs, and we continued on in the first experience we were faced with. So I wanted to become a priest in high school, but at the seminary I continued a program where I obtained my BA. But at the seminary, this was going to be a 5-year program. I was in novitiate. At that time, I was focusing mostly on inner self and contemplation. I studied God, the Bible, psychology. There was many challenges with this. I had an interpreter for some classes. It really helped with the tests. First test, however, I did flunk. I had studied, but I didn't understand what the problem was until I realized that this was going to be a different world. Different theories, different philosophies about God. What should I do? The interpreter thought it could have been a problem with her interpreting, and I said, "Oh no, it's not your fault." I didn't know if I should just close the door on that idea, figure out something else. But no, I really wanted to do this, so I tried again. And luckily, the teacher said that I could take it again in 2 weeks. So I studied really hard for 2 weeks. And I got a C. So that passed. I was fine with that. People around me were really studying, but I studied twice as hard. They passed with much easier success. I felt like I missed a lot of things, so therefore I had to focus much more on my studies to keep up with them. For years, that's what I had to do. There was about 38 students who had taken this master's exam, and 17 passed. I was one of those 17. I couldn't believe it, but yes, I was involved with those people. I passed just like the hearing people. However, some people that were hearing failed, so that meant a lot to me because I studied really hard. There was really an importance of studying and reading. I really am happy that my parents encouraged me to read. It really developed my skills. I wouldn't have had any success without being able to read. I became an ordained priest after I obtained my degree. In America, there's maybe, a few deaf people, but I was really proud to be part of those. All around America, I was working for the International Catholic Deaf Association. I led workshops all over, different meetings for years. On the 4th year, I went to the Philippine Islands, Singapore, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, and I met with many different people. I couldn't believe all of these stories of success and failure. I felt like these people had been keeping these things inside them, and they finally had a chance to express these with me. They all needed this push inside themselves to succeed. I told them, you need to try. It's really important that you don't give up on yourself. So for 13 years, I've been working as a priest, and it just goes by so fast. Now, I've moved to Hawaii. Someone told me that they needed a priest here for about 3 or 4 years. So I said, all right. I moved from New York to Hawaii, which was a completely different culture in itself. There's Chinese, Samoans, many different kinds of people. It was really interesting. So for the past 3 years, I've started a summer youth camp called Camp Mark 7. It's in New York. The government took control of this area, and me and some other people began collecting money so that we could purchase the hotel. So we set up the camp, and the program was really successful. For 3 months, it continues on June, July, and August. But we've had some issues having a nurse, because it's required that there's a nurse. So this is a problem. It's hard to find someone. So I went to a university in Hawaii and decided to become a nurse. And once again, they had a problem with me being deaf. They said, you can't communicate. How are you going to be able to do this? Again, I knew the importance of this, so I sat down and I discussed them with that. I explained the importance and that I could lip read. I knew that there was a problem with the people, but it was the way that they were going about it. They just said no right away. They wouldn't even give us a chance. So I continued trying to explain. So we discussed it. I took 2 nursing courses and I showed them my really good grades. And they finally accepted me into the program. It wasn't easy. There were many communication problems, just like my theology, because of the stethoscope that you have to use, different processes, different instruments. I had no idea that it was so encompassing. I had to know so much vocabulary about medicine, terminology. It's just a completely different world, but I am enjoying the challenge. I hope to get my LPN so that I can be a practicing nurse. And after that, I'd like to become an RN. So I am a nurse and a priest. I look back and think, would I have done this again the same way? Maybe I would have been a doctor. Maybe I would have been a doctor, and gone to medical school in Hawaii or in a religious school. I did become really interested in religion because of my parents. I don't know if it's because God asked me to become a priest or if it's the way that it fell together. I did fight for what I wanted, even though people told me I couldn't. But